Hi, this is Robert from Part Fusion Electronics. My original mold was made with a silicone putty, and one of the problems I had with this, it was easily deformed and there was no easy way to support the legs. So I basically laser cut this kind of cube, and I had made a bit of a lid and then a side. I was able to take my 3D printed master object, this is an older version from last year, suspend the master into the mold box, and then there was a hole at the top here, and I was able to pour the silicone into the mold box and then let that cure. The lid would have been like that, so it would be something like that. I had a hole at the top. That worked quite well, but it was very wasteful. This was made using Smooth-On's Umu 30 silicone rubber, and it worked quite well. Like, there are very few bubbles on the inside and there's basically none on the surface. It picked up all the details, so that worked quite well, but it was very inefficient. You know, there's a lot of wasted silicone in the mold. So in continuing, I tried a different type of mold box. So here I used a circular cylinder type shape. So this was from a Pringles can. So I then suspended my master into the Pringles tube and poured in my silicone rubber. So this is a different silicone rubber I tried. This is a silicone rubber from Smooth-On. It was the Mold Max 30. It was nice, it worked quite well. This one I had a lot more issues with bubbles. And part of the way is that's the way I suspended the object into the container. You can see the bubbles here. So what I've been looking at for my much more refined LED, realistically all I need is a constant amount of silicone. So the red here would represent the silicone around the master object. So in this case I was aiming for about 7mm of silicone, and then I need some sort of rigid body around the edges. So what I've done is made a 3D printed mold box. So here I have a 2mm thick wall. I've given enough space to have about 8mm around all of the edge. I've also put in keys so that they'll help to grip and hold the silicone in place, and I've done it as two parts. I have a second half here. So this one I've used the XTC resin to kind of smooth out the surface. I need to do the same with this. So these halves go together. I'm then using metal rods that can slide into these grooves and holes that I've made along the sides. And they line up with another 3D printed shape. So that allows me to accurately position the bulb shape inside the mold and make it very repeatable. So here's my refined LED bulb. I've got 6mm rods here, and I've got 5.5mm brass tubing that matches the dimensions of the leg I want to use. For the square brass tube I'm using the KS Precision Metals. I can then close up the mold box, and I now have a gap that I can pour my silicone into. After that's cured, I can then open the mold box. I can carefully remove the master object from the silicone. I might need to cut it open. I don't know yet until I try it. Put the silicone back into my mother mold. Place in my legs, my finished legs. Close up the box, and I now have a cavity that I can pour my clear resin into and allow that to cure. So my original idea was to cast the mold with the LED kind of pointing down and have the opening at the top. So one issue with that is as I'm pouring the silicone into here, even though I'll vacuum degassed and remove most of the bubbles from the silicone, I might still end up with having bubbles form just on the inside edge of the underside of the lip of the LED. So one simple solution for that is basically to invert the mold box and pour the silicone from the tip. So in that case, what I might end up doing is just drilling a hole in the tip here, and then somehow figuring a way of sealing up the bottom here, maybe with like clay, and then once I've finished all that, I would still be able to cast in this direction, which is my preferred way to cast. So one last thing I need to figure out is how I'm going to join these two pieces together. So silicone has a tendency to find its way through any gaps, and so when I join these together, I won't be able to seal up all the gaps using hot glue like you would normally do. So what I'm probably going to try and do is use PVA wood glue or maybe some like all-purpose glue like this, and glue the box together. And then once the silicone is set, I would be able to either dissolve the glue or kind of break the glue. It only needs to be a watertight bond. And then when I'm pouring the resin in, I won't need to glue it. I just need to kind of clamp it closed. The silicone inside will stop any resin then from getting out through any of the gaps. For this coming weekend, I'm going to finish sealing this one off, join the pieces together, and have my first experiments trying to pour silicone into this mold. So if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. Like and subscribe. Thank you. Bye bye.